This is the day that three of India's most iconic revolutionary freedom fighters were martyred, hanged at Lahore Central Jail. Bhagat Singh and Sukhdev Thapar were only 23 and Shivaram Rajguru was 22. In their short lives, they lived such short lives, but we still remember them as one of the most prominent faces of India's freedom struggle. Sukhdev and Bhagat Singh began their struggle for India's freedom when they were still in college. They founded a forum that they called as Naujawan Bharat Sabha to inspire the fellow students and other youth to join the freedom struggle. A few years later, they met Rajguru, who was a Sanskrit scholar and a wrestler from Pune. He was inspired and drawn into the freedom struggle because of Chandrasekhar Azad. In 1927, the Simon Commission was formed to report on constitutional reform and the possibility of self-governance for India. But there were no Indians on the commission. This agitated many freedom fighters, including Lala Lajpat Rai, who led the protest in Lahore in 1928. Lala Lajpat Rai was targeted and beaten down by the Superintendent of Police, James Scott. He died after a few days of being critically injured. This protest became the turning point and many young revolutionaries wanted to avenge Lala's death and the death of many others in that protest. So they planned to assassinate James Scott, the man who had beaten down Lala to death. Bhagat Singh, Chandrasekhar Azad, Sukhdev and Rajguru managed to assassinate the assistant superintendent, John Saunders, which triggered a huge police search operation, but they managed to escape. Despite the huge police effort to find and arrest them, these young men refused to lie low or give up their efforts for freedom. In 1929, the government planned to pass bills that were going to further repress the rights of Indian public. Then they decided to bomb the Central Legislative Assembly in Delhi. The intent of the smoke bombs was not to kill. It was so that their voices would be heard and to wake up and inspire the fellow Indians. Though Bhagat Singh and Batukeshwar Dutt, who threw the bomb, could have escaped in the confusion and the melee that followed, they refused and stood there shouting, "Inqilab Zindabad" or "Long live the revolution." So they went in knowing fully well that they would be put to death. Sukhdev and Rajguru were both arrested when their bomb factory in Lahore was discovered. In fact, Sukhdev was the prime accused in the case. It was officially called Crown versus Sukhdev and others. Sukhdev was one of the main planners of these revolutionary operations. Even in jail, they did not remain silent. During the course of the trial, Bhagat Singh and his friends started the famous prison hunger strike to protest the unfair treatment of Indian prisoners in comparison to the British prisoners. They went on an indefinite hunger strike to demand for revolutionaries to be treated as political prisoners. Eventually, the British agreed to some of the demands and most of them ended the strike in September. But this was not good enough for Bhagat Singh, who still demanded the recognition of political prisoner label for the Indian prisoners. He only ended his strike after 116 days out of respect for a direct appeal from his father. On March 23rd, 1931, these brave men went to the gallows with a smile on their faces. They refused the black cloth to cover their face and put the noose around their necks by their own hands. Mahatma Gandhi tried to get the death sentence commuted for Bhagat Singh, Sukhdev and Rajguru. Sukhdev wrote a letter to Gandhiji just before his execution. He said, "Bharat will gain more if we are hanged than if the sentences are commuted. Such was the devotion of these young men who joyfully gave their lives to protect their motherland. And on this day, we remember how their offering of their life for the nation has created a free nation for all of us in this generation and generations to come. Namaskar.